corners of Chicago's streets, there's a chilling tale that has haunted the city since 1991. A story of a clown, not the jolly kind with painted smiles and squeaky shoes, but a twisted, murderous figure who terrorized the very neighborhoods where laughter once echoed. This is the legend of Homie the Clown, a name that sends shivers through anyone who remembers the whispers of that time. It was said that Homie the Clown wasn't just another entertainer dressed in a garish costume, but a dangerous predator who lurked in the shadows of Chicago's South Side. With a face painted in grotesque, exaggerated features, wide, maniacal eyes, a permanent grin twisted into something far more sinister, he was not there to entertain, but to instill fear. His clown persona was a mask, hiding the true monster underneath. The urban legend began innocently enough. Children in the neighborhood, curious and naive, spoke of a strange figure in the streets, an unsettling clown who roamed at night, offering candy and small trinkets to those who dared approach him. But there was always something off about Homie. His gifts, while seemingly benign, were laced with an aura of danger. No one ever seemed to see him leave, and those who ventured too close to his eerie, silent figure would never be seen again. Over time, Homie's legend grew darker. The tales started to merge with real-life disappearances, and soon a sense of dread fell over the area. The clown wasn't just a shadowy figure anymore. He had become something far worse. A serial killer hiding in plain sight. People began to believe that Homie would stalk his victims, sometimes luring them into his van with promises of candy, only to disappear into the night with them, never to be heard from again. In the years that followed, rumours of Homie the Clown began to spread. They spoke of him preying on children, his sharp, jagged teeth hidden behind his painted smile. Others claimed that he would disappear into the fog, his haunting laugh echoing long after he had gone. But no one knew who he truly was, or if he was even real. Was he just a story told to keep kids in line? Or had the city truly been haunted by a killer clown, a predator who used the innocence of childhood to hide his monstrous deeds? To this day, the legend of Homie the Clown persists. Many dismiss it as a myth or an exaggerated story, but there are those who still believe that somewhere in the dark alleys and hidden streets of Chicago, Homie is waiting. And for those who still wander too far into the night, they might just hear the faintest, most unsettling sound, the laughter of a clown, too twisted to be anything but a nightmare. In the forgotten corners of Kansas, hidden deep in the eerie silence of Stoll Cemetery, lies a dark secret, one that should never be sought but forever lingers. The legend speaks of an ancient, crumbling church that once stood here, now reduced to rubble, its remnants buried beneath the weight of time and neglect. But beneath the wreckage, something far more sinister still endures. A set of stairs that lead into the earth, hidden from view, yet said to open into the very depths of hell. Every year, on Halloween night and the spring equinox, the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the gates of hell are said to crack open. It is on these cursed nights that the stairs, once part of the old church, are said to reveal their true purpose, serving as a direct passage to the other side. Those who venture too close report an unnatural cold, a weight in the air that presses down on their chest, and an oppressive silence that seems to swallow all sound. The stories are chilling. Some claim to have seen shadows move at the edge edge of their vision, whispers from unseen voices calling them forward, urging them to descend. But none are foolish enough to go further. Many who have dared to approach speak of the heavy, suffocating presence that lingers near the steps, a force that watches from the dark. And though the church is long gone, the legend persists. For in the dead of night, when the moon is hidden and the air turns thick with dread, the stairs to hell are said to open, waiting for those who are brave or cursed enough to glimpse what lies beyond. But be warned, once you look into that darkness, it might never let you go. Within the hallowed halls of Lincoln Cathedral, a chilling presence lurks, a grotesque monument to a battle waged between heaven and hell. The Lincoln Imp, a creature of nightmare, forever frozen in stone, its malevolent gaze fixed upon those who enter its domain. The legend whispers through the centuries, a tale of demonic mischief and divine intervention. They say Satan, enraged by the construction of the magnificent cathedral, dispatched 2 imps, creatures of mischief and mayhem, to wreak havoc upon the holy site. The imps, gleeful in their destructive mission, descended upon the cathedral, their wicked laughter echoing through the sacred space. They toppled pillars, shattered stained glass, and desecrated the altar, their impish forms revelling in the chaos they created. An angel, witnessing the sacrilege, descended from the heavens, its radiant form filling the cathedral with a blinding light. The imps, caught in the divine radiance, cowered in fear, their wicked laughter turning into terrified whimpers. The angel, its voice booming with righteous anger, commanded the imps to cease their destruction. One imp, overcome by terror, immediately obeyed, shrinking into the shadows, hoping to escape the angel's wrath. But the other imp, defiant and insolent, hurled a rock at the celestial being. The angel, swift and merciless, raised its hand, and a bolt of divine energy struck the imp, transforming it into stone. The imp, forever frozen in its act of defiance, became a grotesque ornament within the cathedral, a chilling reminder of the power of good over evil. But the legend doesn't end there. Whispers persist, tales of the imp's malevolent spirit still lingering within the cathedral walls. They say its eyes, though turned to stone, still follow those who enter, its malevolent gaze a curse upon the unsuspecting. And on moonless nights, when the wind howls through the cathedral's arches, a faint, chilling laughter can be heard echoing through the hallowed halls, a haunting reminder of the imp's unholy presence. tragedy. But it was not just his passing that stirred the imaginations of millions. It was the dark legend surrounding his beloved Porsche 550 Spider, ominously nicknamed Little Bastard. The car, the very machine in which Dean met his end on a lonely California highway, would go on to become infamous in its own right, woven into a web of curses, accidents, and unexplained events that would haunt anyone who dared come near it. Dean, known for his fascination with speed, had poured his passion into the sleek silver Porsche, a car that felt like an extension of his own persona. Dangerous, alluring, and defiant. Friends warned him about the car, claiming it gave off a sinister aura, but Dean shrugged off their concerns. Some even said they'd had visions of his death behind his wheel. Yet, on September 30th, 1955, as Dean raced down Route 466, Little Bastard met its fate, colliding with another vehicle in a brutal accident that killed him instantly. But while Dean's life ended that day, the story of Little Bastard had only just begun. The wreckage of the car was carted off, twisted and mangled, a ghostly reminder of the tragedy. Yet, for some, the remnants held a dark allure. People began to scavenge parts from the Porsche, hoping to claim a piece of history. But they would soon realise that they had taken more than just a piece of metal. They had inherited a curse. The parts from Dean's Little Bastard seemed to carry with them a thirst for destruction, a dark legacy that brought disaster upon any who dared touch it. The first victim was a mechanic who purchased the car's engine and installed it into his own race car. During his first race with the engine, he lost control, careening off the track and meeting his death in a fiery crash. Another racer, who had taken the transmission from Dean's Porsche, suffered a near-identical fate, his vehicle flipping violently on a seemingly safe track. Both men perished, their deaths eerily mirroring Dean's own tragic end, as if the spirit of Little Bastard demanded more lives. Other parts of the car met equally chilling fates. 2 tyres taken from the Porsche blew out simultaneously, causing the driver's car to swerve off the road and overturn, leaving him gravely injured. Those who witnessed the crash claimed that the tyres had seemed perfectly fine beforehand, as if they'd been sabotaged by an unseen force. Another story tells of a physician who purchased the Porsche's blood-stained seats, hoping to restore them, only to find his home inexplicably caught in a blaze soon after, destroying not only the seats, but his life's belongings. The fire's cause was never determined. The twisted remains of Little Bastard were eventually purchased by car customizer George Barris, who intended to display it as a cautionary symbol. But even as a lifeless display, the Porsche continued its path of destruction. In one instance, it fell off its display stand and crushed a nearby bystander's legs. Another time, it slipped loose from its moorings while being transported and killed a truck driver in a horrific accident. It was as if the car itself resented being confined, lashing out at anyone who dared contain it. The final mystery came in 1960, when Little Bastard was in transit to a museum exhibit. Somewhere along the journey, the cursed wreck simply vanished. No one could account for its disappearance, and to this day, Little Bastard remains lost, its twisted metal and dark history dissolved into thin air. Rumours abound, with some believing the car escaped to fulfill its unholy mission, others saying it was buried to rid the world of its curse, and a few even speculating that it reappears now and then, hidden in a collector's vault, waiting to be unleashed once more. The tale of Little Bastard endures, an urban legend as an uneasy question. Could a machine be haunted, possessed by the spirit of its past? The Love roller coaster scream is an urban legend that has haunted listeners for decades, a chilling tale of terror embedded in a seemingly innocent funk track. The story surrounds the hit song Love Roller Coaster by the Ohio Players, a high-energy tune that took the airwaves by storm. But hidden within its upbeat rhythm lies something far darker, a blood-curdling scream that echoes during the instrumental break. At first, it seems like nothing more than an artistic touch, a wild sound effect to emphasize the chaos of the roller coaster ride. But the scream is so raw, so horrifying, that it feels out of place. It doesn't sound like joy or excitement. It sounds like fear, pure and primal, and that's where the legend begins. According to the tale, the scream isn't a manufactured sound effect at all. It's said to be the desperate cry of a woman in her final moments, captured in the most horrifying of circumstances. Some claim the scream was lifted directly from a real-life emergency call, recorded as a woman was being attacked. Others insist that the sound came from the studio itself, where a model, allegedly the woman featured on the album cover, was violently murdered after an argument with the band. The eerie scream has been dissected and analysed, yet no definitive answer has ever been given. It lingers as an unsettling reminder of how closely horror and reality can intertwine. Whether it's a creative flourish or a recording of something truly sinister, one thing is certain. Once you've heard the Love roller coaster scream, you'll never forget it. And every time the song plays, you might wonder, what if the legend is true? What if that scream belongs to a ghost whose cry for help was immortalised in the music, forever haunting the track? The elevator game is not for the faint of heart. This eerie ritual, which originated on a Japanese forum in 2008, promises to transport players to an alternate world if they follow its chilling steps precisely. But those who play it know the risks. A journey that may lead them somewhere they can never return from, with a sinister presence haunting their every step. The rules are deceptively simple. Enter an empty building with at least 10 floors and step into the elevator alone. Press a specific sequence of buttons, 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, and 5, and upon reaching the 5th floor, something unsettling is said to happen. The door may open, revealing a mysterious woman standing there, dressed in shadows and staring straight ahead, ignoring the player. Legends warn never to look at her, speak to her, or acknowledge her presence, for she is not human. Those who break this rule have reportedly vanished without a trace, drawn into her icy, haunting gaze. If the ritual continues correctly, pressing the 1st floor should cause the elevator to ascend to the 10th floor instead, defying the commands. When the doors open, players will find themselves in a world both familiar and unsettlingly different, a barren, dark version of their own reality, empty and silent. Outside, a red cross glows ominously in the distance, casting an eerie light over a desolate landscape. They say if you step out here, you may become trapped, lost in this strange dimension never to return. To return to the real world, the player must repeat the same button sequence, resisting the urge to look at the woman if she reappears. But the game is dangerous. Many who claim to have survived report feeling watched, plagued by shadows and strange figures following them long after they leave the elevator. The elevator game is not just a harmless superstition, but a doorway into darkness, a ritual that blurs the line between worlds and calls forth a presence that seems to lurk in the shadows. And for those who dare to play, one warning remains. Once you enter, you may never find your way back. In the shadowed realms of rural lore, where the line between jest and truth blurs, the legend of cow tipping haunts the fields and farmyards. Said to be a moonlit escapade for thrill-seeking youths, this bizarre activity involves the stealthy approach towards an unsuspecting cow, fast asleep standing upright in the darkness, and the sudden, forceful shove to topple the massive beast over for mere sport. But beyond the surface of this seemingly harmless prank lies a more chilling narrative, whispered among those who know the countryside's true face after dark. As the legend goes, in a secluded farming community, enveloped by the embrace of ancient woods and forgotten roads, cow tipping became more than just a reckless pastime. It morphed into a ritual of fear. The teens of this town, driven by boredom and the intoxicating rush of defiance, would venture out into the fields under the guise of night, their laughter slicing through the silence like a cold wind. But there was one night that turned their mischievous jaunt into a nightmare. As the group approached a familiar pasture, the moon hung low and ominous, bathing everything in a ghostly silver hue. The cows stood like monolithic statues in the mist, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. Emboldened by the eerie night, the teens singled out a large, shadowy figure at the edge of the field. With a mix of exhilaration and alcohol-fueled bravado, they crept up to the sleeping cow. However, as they laid their hands on the creature, ready to push, the cow did not budge. Instead, it slowly turned its head, revealing not the docile eyes of a farm animal, but the glowing red orbs of a creature from deeper shadows. The teens froze, their hearts pounding as the cow, or the thing that masqueraded as one, rose unnaturally on its hind legs, towering over them with a menacing presence. Panic erupted as the creature chased them through the fields, its form blurring between beast and spectre, its bellows a grotesque parody of bovine grunts mixed with something far older and angrier. The youths scattered, screaming into the night, forever marked by the terror of what they had provoked. Those who returned spoke little of the incident, their eyes haunted by the memory. The story spread, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires and during late-night gatherings. Cow tipping was no longer seen as a harmless challenge, but as a dare with potentially dire consequences. To this day, the fields at the edge of that town remain untouched at night, the cows left to their peaceful slumber. For the locals know that some rural myths are better left untested, and that disturbing the natural order can awaken things best left asleep in the darkness. The biting wind whipped across the desolate expanse of Ilkley Moor, a desolate landscape shrouded in an eerie silence. December 1st, 1987, a date etched in the annals of the unexplained, a chilling testament to an encounter that defies rational explanation. Retired police officer Philip Spencer ventured onto the moor that morning, his camera in hand, hoping to capture the stark beauty of the Yorkshire landscape. He would capture something far more extraordinary, something that would haunt him for the rest of his days. As Spencer walked, a strange unease settled over him, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. The air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. A low hum vibrated through the ground, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. And then he saw it. A craft of impossible design, hovering silently above the moor, its metallic surface gleaming in the pale morning light. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, a shape that defied earthly engineering. Terror seized him, a primal fear that gripped his heart and froze his blood. He raised his camera, his hands trembling, and snapped a series of photographs, each click of the shutter a desperate attempt to document the impossible. The craft remained motionless, its silent presence radiating an otherworldly aura. Spencer, paralysed by fear, could only watch as a figure emerged from the craft, a being unlike any human he had ever encountered. Tall and slender, with skin the colour of polished silver, the figure moved with an unnatural grace. Its eyes, large and black, seemed to pierce through him, reading his very thoughts. A wave of nausea washed over him, a dizzying sensation that threatened to overwhelm him. He stumbled backward, his camera falling to the ground, the click of the shutter replaced by the frantic beat of his own heart. The figure glided towards him, its movements silent and fluid. Spencer wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to obey. He was trapped, frozen in place by an unseen force. The being approached, its black eyes fixed on him, and then it spoke. A voice, not heard with the ears, but felt deep within his mind. A voice that resonated with an ancient power. The voice spoke of things beyond human comprehension, of dimensions unseen, of realities beyond the veil of our perception. In the heart of ancient folklore, there exists a creature born from the earth itself, a hulking figure of clay and stone, shaped by human hands, but driven by dark, unnatural forces. This creature is known as the golem, and its legend has haunted the corners of Eastern Europe for centuries. The golem is not a creature of grace. It is slow, lumbering, and awkward in its movements, a giant made of lifeless matter, animated only by the dark magic that gives it form. Its body is a rough, uneven mass of clay or rock, patched together with crude seams, and its face is blank, expressionless, an unfeeling mask devoid of humanity. Some say it was created to serve its master, a protector summoned from the earth itself to do his bidding. Others whisper that the golem was born from desperation, created by a rabbi or wizard to avenge wrongs too terrible to bear. In modern Hebrew, the word golem translates to cocoon, but it also carries darker meanings: fool, silly, or stupid. And indeed, the golem is often described as lacking in intelligence, nothing more than a clumsy tool of destruction, incapable of independent thought or action. But this is where the terror begins, because while the golem is a mindless servant, it is also a force of nature, a brute, unstoppable and powerful, with strength far beyond that of any human. Once unleashed, it will follow its master's commands without question, no matter how horrific. And yet, when those commands are left unclear or unrestrained, the creature can become a terror in its own right, wreaking havoc in its mindless pursuit of tasks it cannot understand. The golem is said to be bound by a a single, fragile command, the inscription of a word, often placed on a piece of parchment and placed inside its mouth. Without this word, the creature is a blank slate, mindless and deadly, its power unchecked. In the ancient stories, there were whispers of golems running amok, destroying villages, crushing anyone who crossed their path, all because their creators failed to control them. And so, the golem is a warning, a tale of what happens when humanity meddles too far with the natural order, summoning forces they cannot control. Some say the golem still walks the earth, waiting for a master to breathe life back into its stone heart. But be careful, if the golem ever awakens again, it will not stop, no matter how clumsy or foolish its creators may have been. Hidden within the eerie expanse of Maple Hill Park in Huntsville, Alabama, lies a playground that few dare to visit after dark. Known as the Dead Children's Playground, it sits in the shadow of Maple Hill Cemetery, where countless lives were lost during the brutal Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. Many of these were children, tiny lives cut short by the merciless wave of illness that swept through the town. Their graves, small and silent, line the edges of the cemetery, just steps away from the playground, where swings now creak and echo through the night. As dusk falls, a haunting atmosphere descends upon the playground. Locals warn that the children who perished here never truly left. Strange occurrences have been reported for years. Swings move on their own, the rusted chains rattling as if gripped by invisible hands. In the sand beneath the slide, visitors find tiny footprints that appear suddenly and disappear just as mysteriously. Some who pass by in the evening hours have claimed to hear faint giggles or the distant sound of children calling out, voices carried on an unsettling breeze that seems to chill the very air around it. Witnesses describe seeing shadowy figures darting between the playground equipment, flickering in and out of sight like fading memories. A few brave souls have even claimed to catch glimpses of ghostly children, their pale forms just visible in the moonlight, with hollow, haunting eyes fixed on the swings. Others report feeling an icy touch on their shoulders or a tug at their clothing, as if tiny hands were reaching out, desperate to play just once more. Despite the renovations and new equipment, the playground remains a place haunted by sorrow and loss, as if the spirits of the past refuse to let go. It's said that the restless souls of these children are bound to this place, forever drawn to the playground they never had the chance to truly enjoy in life. Visitors leave trinkets, small toys and flowers by the swings, hoping to soothe the spirits that linger. For those who know the tale, the Dead Children's Playground is not merely a place for children's laughter, but a portal to something darker. A reminder that some places are scarred by history, with memories and spirits that will not fade, even as time moves on. In the chaos of war, amidst the smoke and screams of battle, some stories emerge from the darkness, tales of spirits that refuse to be silenced, legends that are born from blood and fire. The Ghost of Kiev is one such tale, a chilling legend from the heart of Ukraine, a story whispered in hushed tones by soldiers and civilians alike. It begins with the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, a brutal and unprovoked assault that shattered the peace and ignited a deadly conflict, as Kiev, This mysterious pilot, whose identity was never fully known, became the stuff of legend. The ghost of Kiev was born. The first reports came from soldiers, terrified and astonished, who claimed to have seen a single Ukrainian fighter jet soaring above the city, cutting through the darkened skies with unearthly precision. This pilot, swift, deadly, and seemingly invincible, would appear out of nowhere, striking fear into the hearts of Russian invaders. It was said that no one could match the skill of the Ghost of Kiev, as the mysterious aviator downed enemy aircraft one after another, defying all logic, all expectation. Some believed the ghost was a ghost indeed, a spirit of vengeance haunting the sky, refusing to let Kiev fall. As the story spread, so did the rumours. Some whispered that the ghost of Kiev was not just a man, but a soul driven by fury and hatred, seeking retribution for the lives lost in the war. Others spoke of the ghost as a force beyond the realm of the living, an unearthly presence summoned by the cries of the innocent. There were accounts of a shadowy figure in the cockpit, eyes gleaming with an intensity that sent shivers down the spine of those who saw it, a presence that seemed almost otherworldly. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the ghost of Kiev vanished. No one saw the fighter jet again, and the battlefield was left in silence. Some say the pilot died in the air, their soul never truly leaving the skies. Others claim the ghost still watches over Kiev, waiting, forever bound to the city's defence. But one thing is certain: the ghost of Kiev remains a haunting symbol of defiance in the face of darkness, a spectral guardian who will never be forgotten. The legend lives on, a story that lingers in the air like the distant roar of engines, a reminder that in the darkest hours even death can take flight. In South Korea, a strange and unsettling legend has persisted for nearly a century, a chilling warning whispered among families on hot summer nights. Beware of sleeping with a fan running in a closed room, or it may claim your life. Known as fan death, this belief insists that an electric fan left on overnight in a windowless room holds the power to kill, suffocating the sleeper in their bed. The origins of fan death stretch back to the 1920s and 1930s, an era of modernisation and new technology when the electric fan first arrived in Korea. Stories began to spread of people found dead in their rooms, the only constant a fan whirring beside them. The legend took on a life of its own, with families firmly convinced that a fan could drain the oxygen from a room, causing asphyxiation or lower body temperature to fatal levels. It became a superstition rooted in fear, and warnings echoed from generation to generation. Never sleep with the fan on, and always leave a window open. To this day, the fear remains ingrained in Korean households. In July 2011, the Korea Herald reported that a 59-year-old man had died mysteriously, with a fan aimed directly at him in his sealed room. It was as if the fan, silent and unseen, had become an executioner, waiting patiently for its victim. Some believe the fan spins like a sinister reaper in the dark, sapping the life from those who sleep too deeply under its cold breeze. Many scientists have dismissed the legend, but the fear lingers, and tales continue to circulate of those who ignore the warning, only to fall victim to the fan's deadly hum. The myth of fan death endures, a strange yet terrifying belief that leaves many cautious even today. Perhaps it's not merely a tale of superstition, but a reminder that some forces, once unleashed, carry a chilling weight that no science or reason can dispel. edges of the room, the shadows stretching and twisting into monstrous shapes. A young girl lay in her bed, the covers pulled tight around her, her heart pounding in her chest. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic creak of the floorboards and the rustling of leaves outside her window. A familiar sound reached her ears, a soft, wet lapping. She reached down, her hand dangling over the edge of the bed, expecting the comforting lick of her dog. A warm, wet tongue met her fingers, a sensation that sent a shiver down her spine. She smiled, reassured by the familiar presence of her furry companion. "Good boy," she whispered, pulling her hand back under the covers. The lapping continued, a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound. She drifted off to sleep, lulled by the comforting darkness and the gentle rhythm of the licking. But in the deepest shadows of her room, a different kind of comfort lurked. A figure, silent and unseen, crouched beneath her bed, its eyes gleaming in the darkness. It was not a dog that had licked her hand, but something far more sinister. A creature of nightmare, its breath hot and rancid, its touch cold and clammy. Night after night, the ritual continued. The girl, lost in the innocence of sleep, offered her hand, and the creature beneath her bed accepted the offering, its tongue tracing the contours of her fingers. Each lick was a violation, a silent promise of the horrors to come. Then, one night, the girl awoke, a scream trapped in her throat. The lapping had stopped, replaced by a heavy, uneven breathing. She lay frozen, her heart pounding in her chest, her eyes wide with terror. She reached down, her hand trembling, and felt not the familiar fur of her dog, but something cold, smooth, and undeniably human. Deep in the shadowed forests of Bear Creek, North Carolina, lies a patch of barren earth known as the Devil's Tramping Ground. This ominous circle, located near Harper's Crossroads, is a chilling 40-foot ring where no vegetation grows and no animal dares linger. Locals claim it's cursed, a place haunted by the devil himself, who treads this ground nightly in a sinister ritual. For centuries, stories have circulated about the eerie clearing. People say that when midnight falls, the devil rises from the underworld, pacing the circle with dark intent, plotting his next act of evil. His heavy, unseen footsteps scorch the earth, leaving it lifeless, unable to support even the smallest blade of grass. No matter how much time passes, or how often people try to replant it, nothing grows in the devil's circle. Brave souls who have attempted to camp within the ring tell of inexplicable occurrences. They report feelings of dread so intense, it's as if a dark presence stands beside them, watching. Items left inside the circle are mysteriously found outside by morning, as if some unseen force cast them aside, angry at their intrusion. Others claim to hear faint whispers in the night, growing louder until they're forced to flee, their minds unravelling from the chilling sensation of being stalked by something unseen. Locals warn that nothing stays in the Devil's Tramping Ground without consequence. Those who have dared to linger too long, mocking the legend, have reported strange misfortunes afterward, accidents, illnesses, and haunting nightmares. racing circles around them, his fiery eyes fixed upon their very soul. The devil's tramping ground remains, a barren, haunted scar in the woods of North Carolina. It is a place that repels life, an eternal reminder of an ancient evil lurking beneath the surface. And so, the warning endures. If you find yourself near Bear Creek, steer clear of the circle, for the devil still paces there, leaving his mark on the earth, and perhaps on any soul foolish enough to cross his path. In the shadowed corners of Edinburgh's Greyfriars Kirkyard, a chilling presence lingers, a restless, malevolent spirit known as the Mackenzie poltergeist. The ghost of Sir George Mackenzie, one of Scotland's most infamous figures, is said to haunt the cemetery, bound to the very site where his victims lie buried. In life, Mackenzie was a brutal enforcer of religious oppression, orchestrating the persecution and deaths of countless Covenanters, Scottish Presbyterians who defied the Crown's mandates. Many of his victims were imprisoned in a section of the graveyard now ominously referred to as the Covenanters' Prison, a cold, desolate corner of the cemetery where unimaginable suffering once occurred. Ironically, Mackenzie's own tomb, a grand, imposing mausoleum, sits near the mass graves of those he tormented. The legend begins with reports of strange occurrences around his mausoleum. Visitors have spoken of sudden, icy chills, the sensation of being watched, and even unexplained bruises and scratches appearing on their skin. Some claim to have seen dark, shadowy figures darting between the gravestones, while others have reported hearing faint whispers carried on the wind, voices of anguish and rage that seem to echo from the past. The poltergeist's rage is said to have been awakened in the late 20th century, when a homeless man sought refuge inside Mackenzie's tomb, desecrating it in his desperation. From that moment, the paranormal activity escalated, and tales of the Mackenzie poltergeist spread like wildfire. To this day, the Kirkyard is considered one of the most haunted places in the world. Those who dare to visit at night are warned to tread carefully, for Mackenzie's vengeful spirit is said to lash out at those who disturb his eternal rest. His presence looms over Greyfriars, a chilling reminder that the sins of the past can never truly be buried. In the quiet town of Mattoon, Illinois, during the dark nights of the mid-1940s, a sinister presence crept through the shadows. Known as the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, or the Phantom Anesthetist, this mysterious figure brought fear and paranoia to every doorstep, leaving behind no evidence but panic and unanswered questions. The first attack came without warning. Residents awoke in the dead of night to an overwhelming sweet smell filling their homes. Moments later, they were struck by strange symptoms: nausea, paralysis, and an inability to move or cry for help. Doors were locked, windows were sealed, yet the gas still seemed to seep in, an invisible terror that left left its victims helpless. As more incidents were reported, fear gripped the town, and the legend of the mad gasser began to grow. Witnesses described fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure dressed in dark clothing with a bizarre metallic device that sprayed the toxic fumes, but no one could catch the culprit, and the attacks seemed to defy explanation. Some claimed the mad gasser was a deranged scientist, testing experimental chemicals on unsuspecting townsfolk. Others whispered of something far darker, a spectre, not of flesh and blood, but of malice and fear haunting the streets of Mattoon. Despite widespread panic and desperate efforts by the police, no suspect was ever apprehended. The mad gasser vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving only fear and speculation in their wake. To this day, the mystery of the mad gasser of Mattoon remains unsolved. Was it a person, a spectre, or merely the product of mass hysteria? No one can say for sure. But in the quiet, dark corners of Mattoon, when the night is still, some swear they can still smell a faint, sweet scent in the air, a chilling reminder that the mad gasser may not be gone for good. In the shadow-laden landscape of American folklore, few tales evoke the chill of the Crybaby Bridge. Across the United States, numerous bridges bear this macabre nickname, each story rooted in a haunting event so sorrowful that the echoes seem to transcend time itself. These structures, often decrepit and isolated, are united by the eerie phenomenon of phantom infant wails that pierce the stillness of the night. One such bridge looms on the outskirts of a small, weathered town, cloaked in the thick mists that rise from the river below. Local legend has it that many decades ago, a young mother, driven by despair and madness, threw her newborn child from the bridge into the icy waters beneath. They say she was consumed by grief and torment over her deed, and that her wails mingled with those of her child in a symphony of anguish. Overcome by remorse, she leapt to her own death, hoping in vain to join her child in the depths. Since that fateful night, those who dare to walk the bridge after dark report hearing the harrowing sounds of a baby's cries, so real and so close that they turn in desperation, searching for the child they can never find. Some also hear the ghostly lament of the mother, a mournful wail that drifts across the river and settles like a cold shroud upon the hearts of the listeners. The Crybaby Bridge has become a rite of passage for the local youth, a test of courage or foolhardiness. Teenagers gather in hushed groups, their voices low, as they dare one another to cross the bridge at midnight. Armed only with flashlights that cast long, ominous shadows, they step onto the creaking wood, each plank groaning under the weight of the grim history it bears. As they reach the centre, where the river runs darkest, the cries begin. At first, a soft whimpering, it soon swells into a crescendo of screams, so visceral that many flee in terror, swearing never to return. Others speak of seeing a spectral figure of a woman, her gown flowing and pale in the moonlight, her arms reaching out for the child she will never hold again. Cameras and phones, intended to capture proof, inexplicably fail, leaving only the memories of those haunted by what they have experienced. The serves as a stark reminder of the past's grip on the present, its story passed down through generations as a chilling warning. It is a place where the boundary between this world and the next is thin, where sorrow and tragedy are etched into the very landscape, and the cries of the lost are never far from earshot. In the desolate hills of Bridgewater Corners, Vermont, a chilling legend whispers through the icy winds. The story of the frozen hill people, a tale as bleak as the winters that shroud the region. It begins on December 21st, 1887, a winter so cruel that it buried the hills under an unforgiving blanket of snow and ice, sealing off a poor family of hill farmers from the rest of the world. What happened in their isolated home during those endless frigid nights remains one of Vermont's darkest mysteries. The family, so impoverished they could barely afford to feed themselves, was known for their reclusive nature. They lived high in the hills, where even the hardiest dared not venture during winter's peak. As the snow piled higher, cutting them off completely, rumours spread in the nearby towns. Weeks passed with no sign of life from their cabin, no smoke curling from the chimney, no tracks in the snow. The silence was as suffocating as the frost. When the thaw finally came, a few brave townsfolk ventured to the cabin, fearing the worst. What they found chilled them to their very cores. The family's bodies were discovered, eerily preserved in the ice, frozen in unnatural positions. Their eyes, wide open, seemed to stare with an unsettling awareness, as if they had seen something horrific in their final moments. The mother sat upright in her chair, her hands clasped as if in prayer, her frozen face twisted in terror. The children were found huddled together in a corner, their mouths agape in silent screams. And the father, he was by the door, his hands bloodied, as if clawing at the wood in a desperate attempt to escape. But what truly horrified the townsfolk were the signs that something far darker had transpired. Strange symbols had been scratched into the walls, crude and jagged, as if made in a frenzy. Furniture was overturned, and strange claw-like marks marred the floor, leading to the snow-covered woods behind the cabin. Some claimed they could feel an oppressive presence in the room, an icy chill that wasn't from the weather. The legend grew, with whispers that the family had summoned something during their isolation, something ancient, malevolent, and hungry. Others believed they had been cursed by the very hills they tried to conquer, the land itself reclaiming their lives as punishment. To this day, locals avoid the area, swearing that on cold, moonlit nights, the cabin reappears, its windows glowing faintly with a ghostly light. Hikers who stray too close have reported hearing faint voices carried on the wind, desperate prayers, frantic whispers, and chilling screams that seem to echo from the past. Some claim to have seen frozen figures staring from the shadows of the trees, their eyes unblinking, their faces frozen in eternal terror. The frozen hill people remain a haunting reminder of nature's merciless grip and the darkness that can creep into the minds of the isolated. Their story lingers, as cold and unyielding as the winters that claimed them, a warning to all who dare to tread too far into Vermont's frozen hills.